I just want to say thank you for the privilege of being able to bring the information on Honor Flight Southern Arizona to you people. To the size of the waiting list at that time, over 1,000 World War II vets were dying daily. And they're still having that happen. The program switched from the private pilots at that time to Southwest Airlines, commercial. And they came on as a corporate sponsor. Time is still of essence, as the current stats are, believe it or not, we lose 352 World War II vets per day. Estimated, but not confirmed, but that's an estimation. And the other astounding figures that I got, I'm a Korean vet, in between World War II and Vietnam. It's being estimated that the Vietnam veterans are dying at the rate of World War II veterans are. And they're going to be catching up compared to the Korean vets like myself. For some reason, and I have an idea, and the idea is they used chemicals in Vietnam. They also use some chemicals in Korea, but they have not recognized that at this time. So be it. Currently, there are 131 Honor Flight hubs. Now that's where the Honor Flight starts, is at a various hub. Of that 131, they're working out of 45 of the states at this time. I don't know why the other 5 aren't, but I do know that some of the hubs have been withdrawn because in that area there hasn't been any more vets to put on, so they have reduced those. The Honor Flight of Southern Arizona, as it's called, as you can see by the markers and so forth, broke off from the Northern Arizona Honor Flight. And the reason for that was there was too many vets waiting in Southern Arizona. And as you all know, we're the sister city of Phoenix, so we get what's left sometimes, and so that's why they basically broke off. Our first flight here was founded in September of 2011, 8 years ago. We try, or the Honor Flight people out of Tucson, try to fly 4 flights a year. It's not always available or capable. 2 in the spring and 2 in the fall. And from that, as I said earlier to all of you, the veterans are free, period. There's no charge to me or any of the vets that go. However, there was 82 members on this flight that I went with in just last month, 23rd, 24th grade. 82 out of 200 on the plane. It was chartered. There was a cost for a chartered airplane. There was a charge for all of the veterans' guardians. Each veteran was assigned a guardian every second of the day. Now, it's going to sound funny, but when I had to go to the men's room, the guardian was right along with me. When the guardian had to go to the restroom, I was right along with the guardian. And I had a male guardian. Some of the vets had female guardians. Now, when the guardian was a female, she had a female guardian go with her, not the male, in certain areas. So from that, there have now been I was the 27th flight out of Tucson. And of that, anybody know how many maybe veterans have gone? 911 on those 27 flights. Ours was one of the largest flights because it was total charter for us. We weren't in a plane with other paying passengers, for instance. I was on flight 25 to start with. It was canceled because of bad weather leaving Tucson to hit Dallas and then hit Baltimore. So then I had to be brought into another flight. And from that, I have been honored more than once. Now, I told you earlier in this story that there was this gentleman by the name of Dr. or Lieutenant Colonel or Captain of the Air Force by the name of Morris. My wife and I, the other night, 2 nights ago, went out to eat. We went to Sweet Tomatoes up on Stone and Wetmore. We went, got our food, sat down in a particular booth. Eating. All of a sudden, this gentleman come up to our table. I was wearing this particular cap at the time, my Korean cap, which I'm proud of. He says, I have a question for you, young man. And I says, I'm older than you, sir.
Yeah.
And when I told him my age, he says, yes, you are. But he says, have you heard of the honor flight? And I said, yes, sir, I have. He says, have you been on one? I said, yes, I have. He says, I want to tell you a story if you have the time. I said, fine. He says, I'm from Springfield, Ohio.
Oh yeah, I don't blame you.
And I says, oh? I says, that's where the first one started. He says, yes. He says, I was one of the first that started the honor flight in Springfield, Ohio. And we talked some more and got a little bit more information. Now, here Kathleen and I are sitting in a restaurant. A man from Springfield, Ohio comes up to me and says, I was one of the founders of the honor flight.
Wow.
How does that happen? I asked the man if he was staying here long. He said, no, I'm leaving tomorrow.
Oh, goodness.
Yes, it's the man upstairs. Had something to do. And it was, yes, both of us sat there after he left and we cried. Because how often would another vet, out of this number that have gone, meet a man that started the honor flight?
It's amazing.
Anyway, short story. Each veteran, as I said, they have to have this guardian. Now, the cost of the guardian at a reduced rate for these 2 days, $1,200. Now, I brought that up for a reason. Honor flights are free to the veterans. Everyone else pays their own share. The honor flights have never in the history of the organization ever accepted federal monies or state monies. It's all by personal donations. Period. If someone from a government agency sent one to this group here, they would return it. They don't want it because they don't want to have somebody say you're subsidized by the federal government. Period. And from that, as I said, we chartered a flight and had over 200 on the flight. 82 of us were veterans, okay? Think of the cost then of the rest of that flight. for the 82 veterans, plus the guardians, plus the host. We had 2 doctors, 2 nurses on the flight, were with us all the time. That flight strictly for the veterans, the 82 veterans, was $75,000. So you figure all the 82 plus the other 20 plus, that plane or that flight cost probably $250,000 for us. Now, I'm not a millionaire. I'm doing this talk for the honor flight. Now, I've asked the president if I could do a little asking, not begging, but asking. I have this little box that is for the donations of the honor flight. You may, if you like. If you do not want to, please don't. I totally understand. But if you do, please do. The items on the table, I'll take that in right now. This shirt, for instance, was given to me. I have 2 of them that were given to me. Each one of us, 82 veterans, received 2 of these shirts. We also received a particular honor flight cap. We each then received an honor flight pin that's on my cap. When we went through the line and registered, I was given this little pin holder that was made by a group of volunteers. All of the veterans got one of these. It has my name. It was written in a felt tip pen because they couldn't find the one that said Russell. And so
You'd be rusty.
Rusty is, well, my middle name is Keys, K-E-Y-E-S. So she started it, and I'm called Rusty Keys. So what I did was, because they finally found this, and they said, keep this one, I gave this one to her, and I have the other one. But the pen fits in here, you put it on your desk. This blanket was handmade by a group of quilters. I don't know their name right now, offhand, and each one of the veterans got a quilt. Each one of the veterans got a, well, I want to call it a fleece, but it's a cotton jacket that we wore on the flight because of the fact it was cool in certain parts of the day. That was free to us. But all of these items that we got were donated to the Honor Flight Southern Arizona. And I have a list of all of those in whatever. We left then, well, first I'll go back, and we had a meeting of all veterans and guardians. That was required. We all met, they talked and gave us the rules, so to speak. And we did that, and it was probably about an hour, hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. And because of the fact our first flight was canceled, I had to go through and sit through the second one, but I knew some of it, and I met some of the other people because they had new doctors and the nurses go on the second trip rather than the first. And we all sat there, and our pictures were taken at that time. And they put all of the veterans' pictures in a book. They gave us that book, and I have it in one of my scrapbooks. And I took some pictures, and someone else has taken pictures. And I know that I have 2 scrapbooks I'd like you to look at if you'd like, and I'm going to pass them around and you can look. And one of the pictures happens to be me in my military uniform when I was about 21 years of age. And it's one of those pictures that I guess it was me because it looks like me. There's some people that grow older that the pictures tend to fade, the face and everything. So from there, but we then reported on the 23rd at the airport at 3 o'clock in the morning. We had a roll call or a muster, whatever you want to call it. They called, and then we, like I said, they called all the veterans. They checked their name, make sure they were there. Then what we had to do while we were there, we had to go through TSA for them to check our ID. And it was right in this particular area. So from there, then what we did was we all had, they had goodies. They had water, they had apples, they had oranges, they had whatever, bars and all of this stuff that you could want or not want. And at that 3 o'clock in the morning. And shortly before we left that area to go and board the plane, the Davis-Monthan Honor Guard was there. And I talked to the sergeant that was in charge of them, and they presented the flag, Pledge of Allegiance, to all of us that were there. There was about a little over 300 there, with including the people that were going on the flight. The Davis-Monthan had also 2 airmen that then sang God Bless America, the duet in harmony. And it was tear-jerking. And we left there, then we had to go again through TSA. They checked our ID, and we had to go like everyone else and put all our baggage on through the whatever you know, and this, but I've never gone through security any faster than that one, I'll tell you. Even through when they checked your luggage and all that, because you had certain things and they knew we were told we couldn't take this or that, and et cetera, et cetera. And then we went down to the gate itself. And when we got to the gate, 8 Arizona Rangers in full class uniform greeted us and wished us well on the flight. We went through. From there, we get on the plane and fly out, and as we are backing out and then heading to the main runway, 2 water tankers came and sprayed the plane over the top of it as we went through the spray. I do not have the particular picture, but I've seen one that was taken with the spray in the sunlight, and there's a rainbow.
Oh my goodness.
Why? You all know why. And so from there, we ended up in Dulles this time instead of we were going the first time to Baltimore, as I said, and internationally we ended up this time in Baltimore. It was closer. We arrived about 3 o'clock. We debarked from the plane. As we go through the airport, there must have been 100, 150 honor flight people there greeting us, cheering us, flags waving, and until we got on the 4 buses that we had chartered. And after that, it was on the way, we were supposed to stop at the Dulles Air and Space Museum. Because of our late arrival and the closing of the Space and Air Museum at 4:30, there was no way we could go from Dulles to there and have any time in that, so that was one of the items that was canceled. So be it. We then get to the Dulles Hilton, And they give us our room keys, go to our rooms, unpack or put our bags in there and walk around the hotel. And chow was at 6 o'clock in the evening. So we all went to eat. They had a big banquet for everyone of the 200 plus in a big banquet room. And it was, again, mind-boggling for a lot of us. From there, they had some speakers and talking to us about things that we were going to see and when we were going to go and so forth. And the main thing and there was a couple gifts that were given to the veterans. And one of them was a challenge coin. And that has on it the 27th honor flight out of Tucson, Arizona on it, which is a memory for me and all of us that received them. The speaker then said, "Reveille, tomorrow morning, 5 a.m.
Yeah.
5 a.m. came. Now that's, figure that out, here.
2 a.m.
But I was up at 3 the day before and didn't get a lot of sleep. But anyway, reveille, and they said, make sure you pack your bags and bring them to breakfast. Okay, so we did that. Breakfast started at 6 o'clock. We were there at 5:45, and they had breakfast out, so we ate. 6:30, 6:45, okay, we're going on the buses, and we're leaving here, and hope you have picked up everything that you had. So we get on 4 buses. Now, the reason for the 4 buses, they weren't big enough for all of us, so 20, 40, 60, 80 went in a bus. They had guardians in each bus, so now there's 80. Then you have some of the other workers from the honor flight in there, passing out water, passing out bars, candy, whatever, all of this. Then we leave, and the first stop that we left stopped at, was the Air Force Memorial. Now it has 3 spikes, and if you look at that ground level, it looks like each spike is a different height. They are actually identical, all 3. But optical illusion that we seem to have sometimes, they aren't. They're all the same. And in the middle of that, they have a large gold star. I haven't figured out the meaning of the gold star yet, but it may be in the design of their particular unit, of the Air Force. And one of the people laid on that star and took and got all 3 of those spikes in his picture, or her picture. And as he did, guess what? Airplane went right through the picture. And he has that in his, it's that close to the airport. So, it wouldn't be hard to do that, but yet it's still fantastic. Then they had marble slabs. One was on valor, one was on sacrifice, and the other was on courage, of which I have taken, and I have them on my phone at this point. I haven't taken the pictures off my phone yet to put them with the rest. That's coming. We left there. We were there about 20 minutes. Left there and drove the buses to Iwo Jima Memorial. Now, I'm going to stop here just a second. I'm going to ask a question. It's a trivia question. Can anyone in this room tell me how many monuments there are in Washington, D.C.? You don't need to count, because if you start counting, you're wrong. Alex, I'm sorry. I'll tell you, folks, there is only one monument in Washington, D.C., and that is the George Washington Monument. All of the rest are memorials.
Oh.
That was a piece of trivia they asked us veterans, and we couldn't answer either, so. But it's something that goes out there, and you think, oh yeah, they're all monuments. No, Lincoln is a memorial. I mean, you know. So, another piece of trivia. When you go to the Iwo Jima Memorial, don't just drive up and park and do this. Go all the way around it. There is a drive all the way around it. Make at least 360 degrees. The reason I say that is, when you see the picture of Iwo Jima, it is at about 10 o'clock. Am I correct? In or thereabouts. When you go around that circle twice, that flagstaff is perpendicular. Another optical illusion. Weird, but it's a fact. So, we left there after another 20-30 minutes, and we then went to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. And that took us a little over an hour. Now, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. When they loaded the airplane, they loaded 82 wheelchairs for each and every one of us, whether we needed it or not. The reason for that is because there are times that people get weak. That is the reason for the guardian. My guardian asked me, do you want your wheelchair? No. Well, here he is walking alongside of me pushing a wheelchair. You never know when that vet is going to need that wheelchair.
For sure.
We then, as I say, we were told before we even left town, the memorial is a sacred place. We have a special place. Everyone will be in a wheelchair. The guardian will be responsible for you, and they have a setup on one side of the area for people in wheelchairs. And they told us no talking, no phones. And I said, can we photo with phones? Yes. But turn your phone on silent because we got there, we all sat. I was probably from here to you sitting in a wheelchair to the tomb itself. I was the fourth one in line, and I was very close. The sergeant of the guard came. He walked, and he didn't walk, he did his military walk, and stood in front of the amphitheater that is there on the other side of the tomb. He barked out orders to every single one of the people that were there at that time. You will not talk. You will turn off your phones. You will stand at attention at a particular time for those of you that can stand. Do you all hear me? I mean, it was military, believe me. Understandable. But yet, it sunk in. The crowd that was in the amphitheater were made up of parents and students this time. Grade school and high school students, not college level. And there's a reason for that, I'll say later. He came then, and while he was doing that, the soldier that was going to do the walk back and forth was now over here posting himself ready for inspection. The sergeant left, went, inspected the man up and down, looked at his shoes, went in front, went in back, looked at his rifle, looked at the clip, There was no clip, I mean, the place for it. I mean, he looked at the bayonet, he checked everything. And then he proceeded and brought the other one halfway up the walk where they walk. Then the other one, as the other one came back, they all met in the middle of the walk area. He then relieved the one that had been walking and put the other one as walking. And from there, they walk that space, and there's 21 steps. Now, as that soldier walks and heads, and he's facing northeast, southwest, I don't know the direction at that moment, he stops at the end of the walk. He makes a right turn, and he kicks his heels, and then he stands for 13 seconds. And then he clicks his heels and he turns and he starts back the other way. There's 21 steps along. He stops at the other end at 21 steps, clicks his heels and makes a turn. Changes the rifle to the other shoulder, depending on which way he's going. They do that, believe it or not, for 30 minutes, non-stop. All of those soldiers are specially picked by a certain government army command. Those men, once they're done after 3 years, they hold that same title, but they have strict restrictions on themselves. One, never any alcohol. One, two, never any chewing tobacco or smoking. Three, no ever or swearing. There's, I don't know, half a dozen requirements that these men, if they're ever found to do that, they are out of that corps forever, and they will be disgraced. But otherwise, if they continue all those habits as they did for this, they will always be an honor guard for the U.S. I also noticed that each one of the honor guards, because of our times, Glock, I believe, or it could have been Smith & Wesson, presented each one of those soldiers with a loaded firearm, designed especially for that department of the people. That's been within the last 6 months. The rifles are never loaded. This way they have some sort of protection if need be. After they did this for the 30 minutes and they changed the guard, the sergeant went up to the audience, walked up the steps and brought 4 young people, had to be no older than 17 down, and he had a wreath with them. They were from a particular high school in DC, or Washington area that, and they presented a wreath to the unknown soldier. That took at least another 15 minutes. And for 4 high school people, probably from 14, 15, 16, 17 at the oldest, they were remarkable. I've seen students that I would never allow to do that, but they knew what they were doing. They stood at attention. They put their hands over their heart when the officer was saluting. I mean, it was perfect. After that one, he went back up with them, and he brought another group down that was in elementary. They had 3, and those 3 were excellent as well as the 4 that went down. They did the same thing. And it was a beautiful sight to see some young people respect our country, our flag, etc. And then after that, we went to the 3 memorials: Vietnam, Lincoln, and Korea. As you all know, I'm from Korea. I had been there over 30 years ago, and shortly after it was put up. And I had an experience that I'll never forget there too, at that time. And I walked from the rear, and these 19 soldiers or 18 soldiers are in the rice paddies that are there. They're looking at you. I mean, they may have their heads turned to the side or front. They're looking at you. And the hair, of course, on my body just stood straight up, back of the neck, everything. And it was a eerie feeling. And then alongside, as you walk up the wall, there is a pink marble slab, and it has engraved pictures of people, maybe a colonel, maybe a captain, maybe a doughboy, maybe a tank, maybe a helicopter, maybe a plane. It's all engraved, but no names. Like the Vietnam Memorial, it's strictly all names. And I went back up there that time, and I just put my hand on it, and then I went in front of it. And I stood there and I looked back, and I was totally engrossed in what I was looking at. I was there probably a couple minutes. All of a sudden I felt a tap on my shoulder. Well, it brought me out of a trance, believe me. I jumped. This lady was behind me, and she says, "I'm totally sorry, I didn't mean to scare you." And I said, "That's quite all right." And she says, "Are you a Korean veteran?" And I says, "Yes, ma'am." Excuse me. She said, "You're the first one I've ever met and been able to thank for your service." And I said, "Thank you." When I went back this year, I had just the same feeling. It's something that, if you haven't experienced it, do so if you can. If you can't, look it up on the internet. All of these memorials, because they're gorgeous, they're meaningful, and this type of thing. We left the 3 memorials, and we then ate our lunch. And there was a cafe and a gift store there. And there outside the cafe was a wagon that was a barbecue wagon, and we got free barbecued pulled pork and potato chips and everything, and we went down, sat in their area, and then we left there and went to the final one that we could, and that was a World War II memorial. And that, again, I had never seen, but it is magnificent. All of those are. I don't know if any of you know, but it ran, to build that, over 40 mil. So did the Korean, so did the Vietnam, and it took a lot of time to build them. And in there, they have as you see pictures, it's in a circle, and on one end it has the Pacific pillar, on the other end it has the Atlantic, and you go through those, and then you see all these pillars. Now, they're all named by a state: Minnesota, Arizona, Washington, whatever. And I was looking around, that's the way I saw them. I mean, I saw them all mixed up, and I said, now how would they organize these particular pillars? Because it wasn't alphabetical, believe me. My only surmise was they put the pillars in order of statehood. I don't know that as a fact, but that would be my surmise. And from there, on one of the ways out, there were, in the cement or granite, there was these dioramas about this long and about this high, and it had the various World War II doughboys welcoming, coming home, battleground. I mean, they had about 15 of them or 16 of them embedded in the cement. Gorgeous. They had waterfalls, whole big fountain in the middle. We got on the plane shortly after that, come home, And it was a flight that I'll never forget, and I don't think any other 81 members will either. And the one thing I did do, at the end, if you're interested, see me, I have on my phone a picture that I took out of the plane. And it ends up the whole shebang for me, in a sense. And I have others here, but this one is one of those that I know you can't see from there, but I took it out of the plane window. It is the sunset coming to Tucson.
Oh, my goodness.
The end.